Chris, I understand that you too have a workflow that you wanted to talk us through. Allow me to pull up the screen here. Um, to revert back to the questions we had here. So could you maybe walk us through the problem you solved using this flow today that you weren't able to solve before, and kind of walk us through your decision making here?
Yeah, absolutely. As a bit of background, we, for the last about 2 years, have had a known issue with our VPN software. There's two components to the software. One is a machine tunnel VPN that connects to our foundational services network, allows things like password reset when you're remote, making sure that patching is kept up to date, et cetera. And then also the client portion of the VPN software that allows the users to actually get into the full network and access resources there when they're remote. Unfortunately, the software developer of that particular application had introduced a bug where the machine tunnel VPN was not updating when the client would update. And so the versions ended up getting out of sync, and it started causing a lot of crashing, disconnects, and other issues with the software, which was interrupting users' connections to our network. Now, unfortunately, while we do most of our deployments from SCCM also requires a connection to our main network, which prevented us from using SCCM to patch it, because you can't patch an application that is currently in use. So we didn't have a good fix for this besides manual intervention. However, once we started testing Flow, we were able to determine that this could be a perfect match. And so we were able to walk through our workflow here, or develop this workflow here to walk through a resolution. So the first thing we did, and this is why I love the modular nature of Flow, is we wrote a separate remote action that would check the status of all the machines. Is the software installed? Does it have the binary mismatch? And then it runs through a series of steps, including checking to see if the VPN is in a client session. If it's in a client session, we don't want to interrupt users by disconnecting them when they're in the middle of working. So as it walks through each of those logic decisions, when it finally gets to the point where we know they have the software installed, it does have the version mismatch error, they're currently not connected in an active session, then we can kick off another remote action that would then download the most updated package, uninstall the old application, install the updated application, which fixes the mismatch issue, and then we can recheck to make sure it's actually solved. Did the reinstall process correctly? If so, is the mismatch no longer an issue? If either of those cases are false, it didn't install properly, or the version match was not solved, one of the greatest, most powerful things, as Terry alluded to earlier, is you can do an API call to open a ticket for manual intervention. We ran this against approximately 6,000 devices, had a 98% success rate in remediating it. Had a few lessons learned from it, had a few more tickets come into the help desk from it than we would have liked. And the beauty of Flow is that then altering your flow is relatively simple. We discovered through root cause analysis that most of the time it was either a download error or the reinstall that failed. So we made a small tweak to the remote action to make sure to do a double check that the download was successful, and then added it in the check if it didn't reinstall successfully to just try again. Most of the time, if we just manually pushed out the remote action to remediate those that failed, it worked. And so we were able to very quickly edit the workflow to add a try one more time if it fails, and then again go through the same steps. If again that failed, we open a ticket, we have somebody proactively reach out to the customer to remediate the issue manually. But it worked better than we could have hoped for.
And I think when we were speaking earlier, you mentioned that this was creating a significant issue before with the VPN issue. It was actually disrupting a large portion of your workforce.
Yeah, nearly 90% of our workforce had this problem on their machines. Some it was more visible than others, but with the most obvious problem being is any user who was remote would be unable to reset their password, which would generate its own tickets and issues with the help desk, as well as compliance and security issues when machines are no longer being kept up to date or patching. So this fixes much broader issues than just the VPN mismatch,
Yes,
with a lot
yeah.
greater downstream benefits.